I'm VJ Hamilton and welcome to the Autoimmune RESET, the place for you to learn how to thrive with autoimmune disease and feel empowered to take steps to transform your health to feel better than ever. You can start making changes today to improve your health. So with every episode, my mission is to share with you simple ways to up-level your diet and lifestyle with key learnings from my own journey reversing autoimmune disease and inspirational stories from those who have reset their autoimmune symptoms and are now thriving in life. I suffered from autoimmune disease for over 25 years and now I live symptom-free, and I wish the same for you as well. So thank you for being here and sharing this time with me. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Autoimmune RESET podcast. I'm your host, VJ Hamilton. I'm a nutritionist, scientist, and expert in autoimmune disease. And today I want to talk to you about the relationship between fatty liver disease and autoimmune disease, because I've been working with lots of clients recently, and as you may know, when I see a pattern happening in my clinic, I want to explore more about the relationship. And for many years I focused on detoxification and liver health for a lot of my autoimmune clients, especially when they have autoimmune liver disease. But now I'm seeing more and more that fatty liver and fatty liver disease is linked with autoimmune conditions. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, because a lot of people may have fatty liver disease, but not the serious form of fatty liver disease. And as a result, it's not getting diagnosed and it's getting missed. And it can be an underlying contributing factor to not only autoimmune disease, but other imbalances in the body, such as hormonal imbalance. And I've been working with quite a few men recently who have low testosterone, and fatty liver disease can contribute to low testosterone as well. So it's worth talking about and raising awareness of, because if this is a factor for you, then it needs to be addressed for you to have relief from your symptoms. So today we're going to be talking about what fatty liver disease is, and I'm talking about non-alcoholic fatty liver disease rather than the fatty liver disease that is caused by alcohol, because that is a whole other area. So we're going to be talking about the signs and symptoms of fatty liver disease, how you diagnose fatty liver disease, because often one of the first signs of it is when you have raised liver enzymes on a test that you'll run with your doctors. And I'll be talking about that in more detail, because I have clients who will come to me and they'll tell me that they went to the doctors and there were some liver enzymes were out of range, but the doctor said there was nothing to worry about. Well, if you want to take a proactive approach to your health, then it is certainly something that I suggest looking into if you have one of those markers out of range, especially if you have it out of range or it's increasing on several test results. Then I'll be talking to you about the link between fatty liver disease and autoimmune disease and inflammation, and I'll be finishing the episode going through the key nutrients that can help with this condition and can help with your autoimmune disease as a result. Before I get started, I wanted to tell you about a free event that I am hosting from the 2nd of September 2024. So dependent on when you're listening to this, I would love you to join. It is going to be a live event. So I am going to be hosting the 5-day event on Zoom, and you can join live, but you will also get recordings of the event if you sign up. It is called Set Yourself Up for Health Success. I'm going to be going through the strategies that I took when I started to make meaningful changes to my health, because the truth is I went through 25 years of autoimmune flares, and it was only when I started taking a more structured approach and actually working on the foundational pieces to start with before I started making changes that I was able to see those long-lasting results. And that is what I want to share with you. So you come out of the 5-day event feeling like you have the resources that you need to make those changes in your life so that you can see long-term success in your health as well, rather than going through these cycles of flares that a lot of us go through when you have an autoimmune condition or any inflammatory condition or chronic condition. Or you may have other health goals. It might not be related to autoimmune disease, but I expect if you're listening to this, it is. But dependent on whatever you're setting your sights for when it comes to your health, this is going to help you. So I'm going to put the link to that in the show notes. I'd love you to join me. As I said, I will be hosting it live from the 2nd of September, but if you can't join live, you can still sign up and you will get the recordings for the event. So let's start with the basics. What is fatty liver disease? Well, fatty liver disease is a condition where excess fat builds up in the liver, and there is normally a small amount of fat in the liver, but it's when it constitutes more than 5 to 10% of the organ's weight that it becomes problematic. And as I mentioned, there are 2 types of fatty liver disease: alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is related to heavy drinking, and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is sometimes referred to as NAFLD, and it isn't directly related to alcohol. So somebody might have issues with their liver, they're not drinking much alcohol, and they're wondering what the underlying cause is, and this can relate to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. When it comes to statistics, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease affects about 25% of the global population. So that's a huge amount, and it's particularly prevalent in Western countries. And that is due to the diet that we're eating, the lifestyle that we're living. And I'll get into that in a bit more detail, but the studies have shown that the diets that we're eating with these highly ultra processed foods and living more sedentary lifestyles are contributing to fatty liver disease. So when it comes to the main symptoms of fatty liver disease, there are some that I'm wanted to talk to you about in order to raise awareness of these symptoms, because if you are experiencing any of these symptoms and you have an autoimmune disease or a chronic illness, then as I said, it might be worth exploring whether you have fatty liver disease, because if you do, then you know that focusing on your liver health is going to help you to get better, and you're going to know that that is potentially the reason that you're experiencing these symptoms. So the first symptom I wanted to talk about was fatigue and weakness, because persistent tiredness and lack of energy can be due to an impaired liver function and metabolism. And I know that fatigue is one of those symptoms that is related to so many different conditions, but it's when you have a combination of these symptoms that you start thinking about particular areas in your health. And when I'm working with a client, I'm using the functional medicine matrix to understand where there are particular weaknesses in different systems in their body, because when I see that there is a system that is completely out of sync, then I know that that's where I need to target my therapy to help that person make meaningful changes to their health. Whereas if you just focus on everything and you're not really addressing the underlying issues, then their health progress won't be as quick. And when I'm working with a client, most of the time I'm working with clients for 3 months, and I want to see them accelerate their health as much as possible during our time together and becoming empowered at the end of it so that they can make choices for their own health after we stop working together, and they can go from strength to strength. So fatigue and weakness is definitely something to look out for, but that's when it's in combination with some of these other symptoms of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and one of those would be yellowing of the eyes and skin. Now, this often comes at later stages, but it's still worth mentioning because I have worked with clients who have been experiencing joint pain and tiredness, and their eyes have become discoloured. And this is normally at early stages of detoxification issues. And I worked with a client who had gone to their doctor and they had a high amount of bilirubin, because it's bilirubin in the blood that can cause this yellowing. The liver helps to clear out bilirubin, and bilirubin is produced when red blood cells break down, and we want to clear that out of the body because when bilirubin increases in the blood, it can have an impact on our brain health and it can become toxic to our body. And that's why if you see bilirubin raised on a blood test result, it's worth looking into what the underlying cause is, because you want to do as much as you can to bring that down. And when my friend went to her doctors and she found that her bilirubin levels were raised, we started exploring what might be the potential cause of that. And to cut a long story short, we realised that it was the candles that she was burning every day when she was working. The toxicity in the air was affecting her liver, and that's why the bilirubin was building up. And then she went back for a blood test after a month of eating healthy foods, focusing on detoxification, and she went back to her doctors and got tested, and the bilirubin had come down. But at that point, she had noticed some yellowing in relation to the bilirubin. So it just shows how important it is. Another symptom to watch for is abdominal pain and discomfort, and that is likely going to be a dull and aching pain in the upper right abdomen where the liver is located. And you might feel that that area is slightly enlarged, or just it feels inflamed, and that can be a sign that your liver is under pressure really, and it's not functioning as well as it can do because there is this accumulation of fat in it, so it's not able to work effectively. Another symptom that I think is really interesting is easy bruising and bleeding, and I notice with a lot of my clients that they will bruise easily, and there are many different reasons for that, but I will be considering whether the liver has been impacted, because the liver is extremely important in the body's blood clotting function. The liver produces most of the proteins which are involved in that coagulation process, which is so important for healing and for our body to not bruise so easily, even when like slightly touched. I'll find that some people will just hit their leg gently on the side of their chair and they bruise. And I had a family member who had an issue with their liver and they would bruise really easily, and they just were very paranoid about bruising. And looking back, maybe there was more that we could have thought about at the time. But if you notice that you're bruising very easily and you have some of these other symptoms, then it might be worth looking into. And lastly, swelling in the abdomen or legs could also be linked to your liver, and that fluid buildup just around the abdomen or swelling in the legs and ankles, which is known as edema, that may be due to poor liver function. So a lot of the time when people see those types of swellings, they're thinking about their vascular health, or they're thinking about their cardiovascular health, but the truth is it can be to do with your liver health. So focusing on your liver function can be extremely helpful. So considering all those things together is going to give you some good insight whether your liver needs support and could be at the heart of your symptoms. Now, some other red flags when it comes to fatty liver disease are those raised liver enzymes. And the key enzymes that are normally tested when it comes to the test that you would get done with your doctors are alanine aminotransferase, which will normally show up on your test as ALT, and aspartate aminotransferase, which will come up as AST. And when these are elevated, it shows that there is some inflammation or damage to the liver, because these enzymes should be contained in the liver. So we know when they're elevated, it means that they have been able to get into the blood, and that means that the liver is damaged in some way. So the significance of these enzymes when it comes to fatty liver disease, particularly non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, is that there is inflammation or liver injury, and you need to understand what is causing that. And there can be many different causes similar to autoimmune disease, and it may be that the issue with the liver is the same issue with the immune system. For example, if a virus has triggered this injury in the liver, it may also have caused the immune system to become dysfunctional. So it just shows that there is already a relationship between an autoimmune condition and liver health, because some of the underlying factors will be the same. And the body is all one thing, everything is interlinked. And when you have a couple of different symptoms and you feel like they are completely isolated from each other, it's worth kind of reflecting on that and thinking, what could be the underlying issue here? I've got hair loss, I've got this skin issue, I'm having bloating after a meal, and pull it all together and realize that there are some underlying issues going on in your body which will be contributing to all three. The other thing that you might do with conventional medicine is some ultrasound, and I have referred some clients to go for an abdominal ultrasound to look at not only their liver but some of their other organs like their pancreas or gallbladder, just to check that there isn't anything going on there. And it can be really helpful to do that, especially if you are having any of those symptoms and you're worried, because those images that will come out of the ultrasound can help to diagnose fatty liver and the extent of the fat buildup in the liver, so you know the extent of the issue. So that can be extremely helpful. Other red flags would be those symptoms that I've talked about. So making sure that you are keeping note of any symptoms that you've got. We should all be taking note of how we're feeling every day, any symptoms that are persistent in our lives, and seeing when they get worse or when they get better. And that gives you that empowerment when it comes to your health, because you're suddenly understanding more about your body, more about what's affecting you. And through understanding that, it's much easier to address whatever is causing it, because by observing your symptoms, by understanding what's triggering them, you're going to get to an answer of how to resolve them a lot easier with that information. Now, another symptom that you might not be aware of is elevated blood glucose or elevated cholesterol can be a sign of issues with your liver, because high blood glucose, which can be a sign of insulin resistance, is often due to your liver not being able to regulate the amount of glucose that is stored in the liver, because the glucose that you have in your blood is then stored as fat in the liver. So if you have an overwhelming amount of sugar in your diet, or your body isn't able to regulate your blood sugar as well as it should be able to, then it can lead to fatty liver. And the same comes with cholesterol as well, because cholesterol is made in the liver, but when it is overloaded with fat, it can disrupt the process, and that leads to an increase in LDL cholesterol, which is often referred to as the bad cholesterol, and elevated triglycerides. When I see elevated triglycerides on somebody's test results, I straight away think about the liver, and I think about blood sugar regulation. I'm not thinking about fat as much, to be honest. Sometimes my clients might be eating a high fat diet, which is contributing to that, but 9 times out of 10, it's relating to blood sugar dysfunction. And it can also mean that the beneficial cholesterol, which is the HDL cholesterol, can be lower as well. And that can all be linked to fatty liver disease. And then lastly, if you were referred and your doctor thought that this was an issue for you, then you may have a liver biopsy, and they will know from that the extent of the damage to the liver, if there's any cirrhosis there, and it will give you a much better idea of how reversible your condition is as well. So why is fatty liver disease on the rise? Why am I seeing it more in my clients at the moment? Well, there's probably several factors that are contributing to the increase. And as I said at the beginning of the episode, diet is definitely a factor here, and I think people are getting more health conscious generally, and we're wanting to buy those products that say natural on them, but are you looking at the sugar content when you're buying these foods? Because for years I thought I was very health conscious. I would go and buy lots of my food from a health food shop, but when I looked at the back of the packet, I was shocked at how much sugar and how many ingredients are in the products that I was eating. So the more that you can eat whole foods, the better, because there are so many hidden compounds and chemicals in our foods now, and they can have a massive effect on our body. So I am sure diet is a key piece of this, as well as the popularity in sugary drinks, but not just sugary drinks, diet drinks, which again have lots of chemicals in them. And we know that chemicals affect the liver. If you're drinking, say, a diet soda every day, what effect is that really having on your body? And I found when clients just take out that one thing, they see huge improvement in their symptoms. I mean, another factor is also physical exercise. And the unfortunate thing is, if you have a chronic condition or an autoimmune disease, exercise is a lot harder, but it is still extremely important. I mean, you really do need to pace yourself as much as you can, especially when you're in a flare or you're recovering. But if you can start to incorporate more exercise in your life and more physical activity, it is going to help improve things like fatty liver disease. And it comes down to some of the jobs that we're doing, like the desk jobs, and how much screen time we all now have. So if you can change your routine slightly, just switch it up. If there are times when you're sitting down where you could be going for a walk, or you could be doing some stretching, or you could be standing up, then it's better to do that instead of just being sat all the time. So they're probably the two main factors. But there are also a lot more chemicals in our environment. People are drinking more alcohol routinely, and I know we're not really touching on that side of fatty liver disease, but that can be a contributing factor as well. And lack of sleep as well. We know that lack of sleep can contribute to having issues in our metabolism and in our blood sugar regulation and in our inflammation, and that can all contribute to fatty liver disease as well. So fatty liver disease isn't just an isolated condition. It's increasingly being recognised as a risk factor for other serious health issues, particularly autoimmune disease. So what is the link between fatty liver disease and autoimmune disease? Well, the truth is it all comes down to inflammation. And when fat accumulates in the liver, it can lead to liver inflammation, which is referred to as steatohepatitis. And this chronic inflammation doesn't just stay confined to the liver. Any type of inflammation in the body will often spread to other areas, and this can trigger a systemic inflammatory response, which increases the risk of autoimmune reactions. Now, I've spoken around how important the liver's role is in blood clotting, and when your body doesn't have the necessary proteins for proper blood clotting, that can lead to an issue with wound healing and excessive bleeding, and that can lead to damage of your vessels. And one of the autoimmune diseases, vasculitis, is linked to vascular damage, and the fact that the vessels are damaged is likely why there is inflammation there in the first place. So that could be a key link between fatty liver disease and vasculitis. So on an earlier podcast, I talked about hypoxia in autoimmune disease, especially when it comes to multiple sclerosis. And hypoxia is when there are low oxygen levels in the tissues, and it means that the tissues or the central nervous system or the cells don't get enough oxygen to be able to work optimally. And that can lead to an autoimmune condition because, again, the cells or the organ becomes damaged, and then there is this inflammatory cascade around the damage that has been created as a result of a lack of oxygen, and it can also lead to oxidative stress, and we see that in multiple sclerosis. And the thing is, when the blood flow is impaired as a result of having fatty liver disease, that can lead to certain autoimmune conditions. So just by having fatty liver disease, the effect that is having on blood flow and may possibly lead to hypoxia as a result of that, then that can indirectly lead to autoimmune conditions, especially conditions like multiple sclerosis, where they have shown that hypoxia is a contributing factor to the condition and to those lesions that we often see in patients who have multiple sclerosis. There's also been research to link that chronic systemic hypoxia is associated with metabolic syndrome, which brings in how our metabolic health is so interlinked with autoimmune disease and fatty liver disease as well. So when we have low oxygen levels, it means that it's going to affect how well we're regulating our blood sugar, how well we're producing energy from carbohydrates and fats, and whether we have insulin resistance or not. And that can be as a result of having low oxygen levels. So that is always a good marker to get checked, because that's going to give you some insight whether that again is an area that you need to focus on. And you might not know, but hypoxia influences immune cell behavior. They've shown in the studies that low oxygen levels can activate immune cells like macrophages and T cells, which can lead to that heightened inflammatory response. And this can worsen both autoimmune disease, metabolic health, and fatty liver disease. And it can be a hallmark of chronic inflammation as well when you have a lack of oxygen delivery throughout the body. And there are even these hypoxia inducible factors, and they're proteins that help cells respond to low oxygen, and they again can promote inflammation and fibrosis, so scarring in the liver. And we know when you have those raised enzymes, it's showing that there is some damage to the liver, and that can lead to scarring on the liver, which can become irreversible and lead to cirrhosis. So these are just things to bear in mind. Obviously, I'm telling you worst case scenario here, and hopefully that isn't the case for you, but that I just want you to get ahead of it so that you can deal with this before it gets to that severe level where there will be things that you can do, but it might not be as easy to reverse as if you catch it early. Before we go into the natural remedies for fatty liver disease, I just wanted to talk about the impact of fatty liver disease on hormonal health, because it's another critical aspect to consider with fatty liver disease. And the liver is a major player in hormone metabolism. And we often think of our endocrine system, and for a woman we're thinking about our ovaries, and for a man we're thinking about our testes when it comes to our sex hormones. But the liver is the key organ when it comes to your hormones. It helps to process and clear hormones like estrogen, insulin, and thyroid. And when the liver is burdened with excess fat, it is not able to manage these hormones anymore, and that's when our hormones become dysregulated. And one of the things that I work on with my clients who are in perimenopause or menopause, or my male clients who have low testosterone, I'm working on their liver health, because if they have low amounts of these hormones or their hormones are out of balance, then I'm thinking about their liver health, because the liver is the key organ for keeping all this in check. For example, in women, a fatty liver can lead to estrogen dominance, which is a condition where there is more estrogen relative to progesterone, and that can have many different symptoms like weight gain, mood swings, and even can lead to estrogen-related cancers. So it's important to get ahead of it. And in men, fatty liver disease can lead to lower testosterone levels, which can affect many different factors, including energy levels and muscle mass. And let's not forget insulin. Insulin resistance is a hallmark of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. When the liver is overwhelmed with fat, it becomes less responsive to insulin. And if you've listened to this podcast before, you'll know how important insulin is in regulating your blood sugar and stabilized blood sugar is absolutely essential when it comes to symptoms like fatigue, because if your blood sugar isn't regulated and you're not able to produce energy effectively from the food that you're eating, and I'm talking specifically about carbohydrates here, but if you're not able to regulate that response, then you are going to have fatigue and energy crashes, because you're just not getting the benefit of the food you're eating, and also you're going from massive highs to lows. This is just definitely something to bear in mind, that the liver is important for insulin regulation. And then unfortunately, we know that there are certain conditions like polycystic ovaries, which are the result of a dysregulated blood sugar response. And there is lots of studies to show that insulin resistance is a cause of PCOS. So if we have this issue with the liver, then we have an issue with blood sugar regulation, and the liver is trying to balance our hormones to start with. Then we have a knock-on effect with our insulin levels not being at the right amount, and as a result of that we develop insulin resistance, and then that can go on to become PCOS. So you can see how this all links together, and I'm making it sound very complex, but where I always like to start with a client is thinking about what is the major contributing factor here. What can we work on to make a real difference? And what I share with you on this podcast is those areas where, if this is resonating with you and this might be one of your contributing factors, by working on this, you're going to see a massive improvement. And once you see a massive improvement in your symptoms, you can then start tweaking things and going a bit more slowly and gently with yourself, but working on those other areas at a lesser pace. But once you get that major contributing factor, it's not always one thing. It might be, say, 3 things. It might be your gut, your liver, and your cellular health that need to be worked on, but maybe specific aspects of those. But then when you work on that and you see the big difference, like I did when I did an antiviral protocol, viruses were at the heart of my condition. I had post-viral chronic fatigue syndrome. When I did an antiviral protocol, I got my energy back and I started feeling like I could actually get up in the morning and I can make my smoothie and take my supplements and make myself a healthy lunch. And then that has a knock-on effect to lots of different areas. So if you think that this is a factor for you, your hormones are out of balance, you're having some of those symptoms that I mentioned, you may have had some of these liver enzymes flagged on one of your test results, then you know that this is an area for you to look into. So what can you do about it if you have fatty liver disease? Because the good news is that fatty liver disease is largely preventable, and in many cases it's reversible. And I think that is so empowering when you hear that. Even if you have this condition, it is likely reversible if you do something about it. So there are many different ways to approach improving your liver health, and I'm going to share with you some of the easy ways that you can start adapting your diet and your lifestyle today to help with your liver health. But obviously with these types of conditions, they can be a lot more complex. I always recommend going to speak to your doctor, and then once you have spoken to your doctor, you can then work with a nutritionist like me who can really help you to drill down into what the underlying issues are and working on those. But here are a few things that can really help your liver health. And one of them is cruciferous vegetables. And when I started making changes to my health, I was eating cruciferous vegetables at least twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. And I still eat cruciferous vegetables every day now because I need that extra support with my liver. I know that through my genetics that I have a few variations in some of my genetics around my detoxification pathway. So I like to bring in cruciferous vegetables every day. Vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale. I love as a side dish kale with a bit of lemon juice sprinkled on. It's absolutely delicious. And they have compounds in them called glucosinolates and sulforaphane, And these compounds help the liver detoxify harmful chemicals, and they boost the production of glutathione, which is a major antioxidant that protects the liver from damage. And that's one of the genetic variations that I have. I don't produce as much glutathione as the next person, so I know I really need to focus in that particular area and make sure that I'm continually maintaining a sufficient amount of glutathione in my body. And that can help to decrease inflammation. It can also help to reduce any injury or any oxidative stress that is worsening fatty liver disease. The next dietary intervention that you can bring in is eating berries like blueberries, strawberries and raspberries, and they're rich in anthocyanins and polyphenols, which are potent antioxidants, and these antioxidants help to neutralize any harmful free radicals, reducing oxidative stress and protecting liver cells. And berries also have anti-inflammatory properties, so you're looking at both the antioxidant side of this, so bringing down oxidative stress, but also the anti-inflammatory properties that berries have. And berries can also help to improve insulin sensitivity, which help to reduce the fat accumulation in the liver. So waking up every morning, making a smoothie with a handful of delicious berries can be a great way to support your liver health. Next is one that you might be surprised at, because it can be a food sensitivity if you have an autoimmune condition. So be careful with it, and it's all to do with quality over quantity. But it is soy products like tofu, tempeh and edamame, and they contain isoflavones and lecithin, which has been shown to help reduce fat buildup in the liver by regulating fat metabolism. And that's absolutely key if you have fatty liver disease. You want to reduce that fat buildup as much as possible. And those isoflavones can modulate the genes involved in fat storage and breakdown and reduce the liver's fat load. I think soy has had a bad rap over the years, and it's probably because it is so heavily processed rather than the soy itself, because we look at the evidence from the Japanese culture and the food that they're eating, and it's highly beneficial, but that's when it's in its purest form. If you can incorporate organic, natural types of soy, then that is going to be beneficial as long as you don't have a food sensitivity around it. But soy can really help to improve lipid profiles as well. So it can help to lower cholesterol and triglycerides. So if you have high cholesterol and triglycerides, then it's definitely something to start incorporating. Next is garlic, and I use garlic for lots of different things, and you can supplement garlic as well. And it includes sulfur-containing compounds like allicin, and it also includes selenium. And garlic helps to activate liver enzymes that are crucial for the detoxification process, and they enable the liver to remove toxins more effectively. So if you have an issue with your liver and toxins are building up in your body, then garlic is a really effective way to help to remove that. Garlic can also help to reduce cholesterol and triglycerides in the blood and reduce the fat buildup in the liver. So again, this is a great nutrient that you can easily add to your diet that is going to help with fatty liver disease. And lastly, one of my favorites is turmeric. And the active compound in turmeric, as you may know, is curcumin, and it's well known as an anti-inflammatory and antioxidant spice. And there is so much research around curcumin for its beneficial effects in many inflammatory conditions, including rheumatoid arthritis and, autoimmune skin conditions. And it's just a really powerful antioxidant. When it comes to your liver health, it's been shown to help reduce liver inflammation by blocking inflammatory pathways and reducing the activity of cells that cause that fibrosis that can lead to irreversible liver damage. So curcumin is a great one to be adding in. If you are taking anything like curcumin as a supplement, please work with your nutritionist or health practitioner to make sure that it's right for you, because it does have some contraindications with certain medications and certain conditions. So it's always worth getting that checked out. But these are foods that you can integrate that are really going to support your liver health. So cruciferous vegetables, berries, soy, garlic, and turmeric is a great starting point when it comes to reducing inflammation, supporting detoxification, regulating fat metabolism, and protecting your liver from damage. So if you can start incorporating these foods into your diet today, it's going to make a big difference for your liver health. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch on physical activity. And I'm sometimes conscious about talking about physical activity on this podcast, because I know when you have an autoimmune condition or chronic fatigue, it's not as easy to do a lot of physical activity. And at the minute, I am training for the Great North Run, and the Great North Run is on the 8th of September 2024. I have realised through training for it, because it's a half marathon, how much more capable I am now of running than when I had chronic fatigue syndrome. And not just that, I'm not finding this easy. I still have work to do. I'm still not as strong as I know I can be, but I am a lot stronger than I used to be. But what I've noticed when I'm running, it's not easy at all. But when I compare it to doing a 5k run when I had chronic fatigue syndrome, the effort and the strength it takes for me to do a 20k run is nothing in comparison to what it took for me to do a 5k run when I had chronic fatigue syndrome. And I'll be honest, sometimes I would have to just walk out of the gym because I couldn't even do 1 kilometre. And even that 1 kilometre was harder than when I get to 19 kilometres doing this training. I think that is a good way to look at your condition, how strong you are with just doing a small amount. If you are in pain or if you are in fatigue state, it's tremendously hard. And I just realized that, and I just thought back to myself and I thought, gosh, you got through that and you did that. And I feel so much more proud of that person 10 years ago who was just doing the best that they could with the energy they had, to even me now training for this run. I mean, it's difficult, and I'm quite happy that I'm only 2 weeks away from doing it, because it has been intense training and it's not easy. And, at the end of the run, I'm completely exhausted. But it's made me realise that, there has been a massive shift, and just how hard it was to do any type of exercise when I was in a state of chronic fatigue, and even before that when I had an autoimmune condition. So just to say that, because when it comes to your liver health, physical activity is really important. But if you're at that point where you can't do much, then don't put too much pressure on yourself, but just try and incorporate it as best as you can. There's been a few studies, well, not a few, there's been many studies, but I just wanted to touch on a few studies around fatty liver disease and exercise. There was a study published in the Journal of Hepatology, and they found that both aerobic and resistance exercise significantly reduced liver fat in patients with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, even without weight loss, which is incredible. And the study showed improvement in liver enzymes and reductions in inflammation and fibrosis risk, which highlighted the importance of moderate to vigorous physical activity in enhancing fat oxidation and insulin sensitivity in the liver. So that was a combination of aerobic and resistance exercise. And I really like to incorporate those both into my routine anyway. And even when I had chronic fatigue syndrome, I was doing some cardio and then some resistance training as well. And then there was also research around high intensity interval training, which can be quite helpful if you have an autoimmune condition where your mobility isn't affected, because it's just short amounts of time doing exercise, and you only need to really commit 5 to 10 minutes of this a day, or even 3 to 4 times a week to see the benefit. And the research in the American Journal of physiology, endocrinology, and metabolism demonstrated that 12 weeks of HIIT significantly reduced liver fat content and improved liver health markers such as ALT and AST levels without significant changes in weight again. So HIIT's benefits are linked to improved mitochondrial dysfunction, and that can be for anyone who has fatigue issues, and increased fat oxidation, making it a highly effective way for reducing liver fat in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So these are a few things that you can think about incorporating into your routine. As I said, always work with your own capabilities and working from your current baseline. Don't put yourself under too much pressure, because if you are recovering, then that is the main thing. So focusing on sleep, focusing on nourishment, focusing on rest, and then trying to bring in as much exercise as you can without burning yourself out, because it can be beneficial when it comes to fatty liver disease. So we've covered a huge amount today. It is a topic that I have become very passionate about, to be honest, because I'm seeing it so much in my clinic at the moment. I am an autoimmune disease expert. I work a lot with the immune system, but I find more and more I'm focusing on these other key areas which have this knock-on effect to the immune system. And yeah, we can stabilize immune cells, we can work on different inflammatory responses, but the truth is, if these underlying systems are out of sync, then I can only go so far with working on the immune system. And that's why these systems are so key when it comes to your health. So if any of this resonated with you, then feel free to pop over to my Instagram account at the Autoimmunity Nutritionist. You can ask me questions over there, and you can download my free guide, the Autoimmunity Recovery Plan, which I'll put the link to in the show notes, if you want to start making meaningful changes to your health today, which will benefit you whether you have an autoimmune condition or not. But if you have an autoimmune condition, it's going to help you to start making those meaningful changes to your health. And then, as I said, I have my free event, which I'm hosting live next week, Set Yourself Up for Health Success. It's just a great way to get yourself started and make sure that you make those meaningful changes to your health that last, whether you are just starting out or whether you have been making changes for a while but you haven't seen any success yet. This event is for you. So you'll find the link to join in the show notes. If I don't hear from you, have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll be in touch soon. Take care. Thank you very much for joining me today on the Autoimmune Reset. I really hope you enjoyed the discussion, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. And if you liked it, I would hugely appreciate a review on iTunes, as it helps me understand what you like about the podcast and to help share the information with more people. I'm excited to speak to you next time, and remember, you have the power to take the reins on your health. So keep the faith and celebrate the small wins. Until next time.